Yeah, FIONA PATTEN, Australian Sex Party, talking cannabis.
Welcome back to the Herbalized podcast. We had a surprise episode that sprung up on us, but a pleasant surprise. This week in Parliament here in Victoria in Australia, a motion was put forth by FIONA PATTEN, who's the member for the Northern Metropolitan Region, but also the leader of the Australian Sex Party. And she put forth a motion for debate that would essentially see recreational cannabis legalised in the state of Victoria and all the additional benefits that would entail. Literally just after the debate had finished, and the debate lasted for almost 2 hours, and we'll put links in the episode notes to where you can see the debate. We were able to sit down with FIONA. She was kind enough. We sat down for about half an hour at Parliament. So there are a few bells ringing and there are a few pauses for her to check if she needed to nick away. But we got about half an hour with her. And look, she talks about the motion she put forth, and we have a good chat about the potential ramifications of this and what it might mean going forward for the state of Victoria. So just before we go into the interview, I will have to say, when I first put up the post on Facebook and Instagram that I was going to be sitting down with FIONA PATTEN, there was a lot of support from all the local Australian cannabis community and the various different Facebooks, and I really appreciate all the shares and all the attention that this one got. A few guys were kind enough to leave comments. I guess the wording of the bill itself answers some of those questions. The debate itself answers some of those questions. Perhaps the discussion does as well. But I think, it's partly evident that the medicinal cannabis debate is certainly separate from the recreational one. And you've just got to give a kudos to FIONA for taking the step in starting this discussion. So we'll shoot straight over to the interview now. I hope you guys enjoy it. Stay tuned for the end for all the housekeeping and THC shout-outs and what's happening for future episodes. Okay, guys, we are back with the Herbalized podcast, and literally just come out of Parliament with the one and only FIONA PATTEN. FIONA, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, no, great to be here. My pleasure.
Now, you have in front of you the motion that you've just put forward. Would you mind?
No, if the listeners don't mind, it's kind of legalese and boring, but I moved that the House notes that the Victorian Parliament, all previous governments from both major parties, and every member of this and the other House has failed the Victorian people on the issue of drug law reform, in particular the legalisation of cannabis, and 1. calls on the Victorian government to immediately remove any criminal and civil sanctions for the possession, use and cultivation for personal use of cannabis by persons aged 18 and over. 2. Notes that prohibitions on drug paraphernalia, such as bongs, should be immediately abolished because there is simply no evidence that such restrictions work. 3. Urges the Victorian government to allow for the licensing and taxation of farmers, wholesalers and retailers of cannabis for recreational purposes. Notes that other states and territories in several countries have legalised cannabis with beneficial effects on citizens and the economy, and Victoria, as Australia's most progressive state, should do the same to lead the nation in what would be an entirely new industry. Notes that criminal syndicates such as the Australian Italian Mafia and outlaw motorcycle gangs, as already identified by crime authorities, rely on revenue from the illegal sale of cannabis to fund their criminal activities, and legislation would cut off their financial legs and make it harder for them to operate. And notes that making these amendments immediate changes will improve the Victorian bottom line by billions of dollars via money saved through enforcement and the court systems, and via the taxation revenue generated through such a move.
So, with 3 or 4 short, succinct paragraphs,
yes,
you've potentially put Victoria on track to becoming the Garden State again, and it makes a lot of sense. Were you surprised by the responses you received in the House?
No, I wasn't surprised. I know that this is the beginning of a conversation, and we're seeing that conversation happening around the community. I mean, we're seeing ex-police commissioners saying we can't arrest our way out of the drug issue.
Yeah.
We're seeing, we even sort of heard the Conservative Prime Minister Tony Abbott saying, "I think we've lost the war on drugs, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't keep trying."
Yeah.
So we're seeing that change, and I think the community has moved on, but. It was so interesting, like all of them, everyone who argued against it, which was nearly everyone, just put up those issues around the dangers and the harms.
Totally. Which really, everything they say in opposition to you is really just backing up everything you've got to say. I mean, they've got to study, he's got to study, she's got to study, but I mean, at the end of the day, when you talk about harm minimisation, by actually legalising it, and a big point of legalising is regulation.
That's
that
right.
The government gets involved in it, is how we start to go about minimising all these things.
Exactly, and so this is, they sort of fall into your hands, don't they, when they do that, when they say, yes, but we've got this problem and the youth are getting access to it, and you say, okay, well, license people that are selling it and you won't have drug dealers selling it to youth.
Totally.
The harm, and everybody's using it. Right, so your prohibition's not working very well then, is it? It's not stopping people accessing it. Yeah. So a new approach. But I think this just gave us this is going to be incremental, but I would hope Victoria may really, as you say, become the garden state again.
That's right. I mean, look, I have no reservations that you thought you were going to walk in there today and have a resounding
That's right.
yes.
I know. No, I was expecting cannabis cookies in Parliament tomorrow afternoon.
But I mean, the Greens were quite offended in their response. Was that a surprise at all? Were you calling the Greens out a little bit with this?
Look, I am calling the Greens out on this a bit. They sometimes talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. Yeah. So they can say, oh yes, we've been arguing drug law reform. Well, when have they ever put up a motion? When have they ever tried to legalise or decriminalise drugs of any sort, be it cannabis or ecstasy? Yeah. So I think it's a bit cute that they go, we've been doing this for years. The Greens like to take credit for things, and that's well and good, and I'm sure there are some things that they should take credit for, sure. and I have absolute respect for that. Yep. But not a single person in this House has called for the decriminalisation or legalisation of cannabis. Not a Green, not a Labor, not a Liberal, not a Nat. Yep. No one has, and I knew that they were upset, so I did go and check Hansard just to make sure.
Yeah, for sure. Although you did mention,
stand corrected.
Yes.
Stand corrected.
Which was, of course, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Same House.
I know.
Same debate.
Well,
at a different time.
Yeah, actually, I'll correct you now because, the Premier, Jeff Kennett, was in the Greenhouse. But he didn't bring the debate into the House. Mm-hmm. What he did was, but he did talk about it. Yeah. And he spoke, and as you say, it was 20 years ago. And, geez, it's been a long 20 years since we've had a Premier talk that way.
Right. And in terms of 20 years of cannabis, I mean, that's almost as long as we've been talking about legalised medicinal cannabis in California, which was kind of the first place to kick it off and start it. So we've got another 20 years worth of data to look at from not just California, but all around the world as well.
Yep.
How separate, or how important is to keep the issue of recreational cannabis and medicinal cannabis separated?
Yeah, I think it's really important. Although it is really important understanding that. But when you look at decriminalisation, that actually does open up people to be able to use cannabis as medicine. Sure. And for pleasure. Yeah. But it does open it up for them to use it as medicine and grow it themselves, the same as people grow chamomile. So there is a slight crossover there when you look at decriminalisation, but I certainly think we need to be very conscious that the work that is being done overseas on medicinal cannabis is amazing. And we're just learning so much more, and you don't want to get the personal use and the pleasurable cannabis use mixed up with that. But yeah, there is that small crossover, which I completely support.
Now, there wasn't a lot of talk, there was a little bit briefly, but in talking about cannabis prohibition, we don't seem to look back at failed alcohol prohibition. And I was wondering, maybe, I mean, the Greens label this as a bit of a hype or publicity stunt on your behalf potentially, but maybe a real publicity stunt would be to bring the same motion for alcohol and to have it criminalised, because if we're going to hold it up to the same standards, I mean, people were talking about 10% of calls to the crisis hotline being for cannabis. Well, there's 90% of the calls are obviously coming in for something else.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, seriously, it was interesting, and I called James Purcell, who gave a very thoughtful contribution, and he's from the West and Vote One local jobs, and he did look at balancing the arguments, and he'd obviously thought about it with his own conscience. But he said if alcohol was up for debate to legalise, he would not support the legalisation of it, which I thought was amazing. And I think he got my point when I said Al Capone will probably write you a cheque for your next election if that was the case. And he took that point.
Yeah, and look, it's the beginning of a conversation, like you said.
Yeah.
You're starting it. Where does the process go from here? Because you were pretty adamant that this isn't the last time we're going to hear from you about it.
Oh no, and this was not a stunt. This was something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
It's something that I feel passionate about, and I want to change. So it's not a stunt, and I've done this now. We've started this conversation within my house. I've also done a big referral to a joint house committee to look at all drug laws, to look at what's working in other countries, what's working in other jurisdictions, what's not working. And we're going to do a very large body of work looking at Victorian drug laws as they stand, and the benefits and the negative impacts of those laws on our community. So this is sort of leading into that. But I just thought it was time to have a conversation about it at a parliamentary level.
Yeah, and hats off to you for it. I mean, because some of the common criticism of it, that it was perhaps not very well thought out, but I don't think that was the intention for you to present a plan of how recreational cannabis would be implemented into Victoria.
Yep.
It's just the fact that it's a conversation, and here are some things to get you thinking about: local jobs, potential revenue, and the fact that this guy hasn't fallen down anywhere else in the world.
That's right. And if I'd wanted to, legalise it today, I would have introduced a bill.
Yeah.
But this was a motion, and this was a motion actually calling on the government to do that, which they're not ready to do, and I understand that. But
and the start of your motion kind of ruffled a few feathers as well in kind of calling out the whole entire government in their failure to the people.
Yeah, but none of them could really address that. And I mean, I know Colleen Hartland did try and address that, but again, in her addressing that, she didn't mention cannabis. She didn't actually mention that she'd done anything about cannabis.
I mean, they all know that once this conversation starts, and it had to start at some time or another, they all know that they're on the back foot straight away. Like
that's right.
We were saying earlier, the facts and figures just don't add up.
None of their arguments warranted prohibition.
Yeah.
In fact, all of their arguments warranted regulation. And I know they're saying, oh, well, we don't know the dangers. Well, keeping it illegal isn't going to help that, is it? So, I think they all understand the kind of hypocrisy in what they're saying. We could have banned tobacco last night. We did a tobacco bill last night. Not a single person moved to ban tobacco.
And look, then you get to talk about how different corporate investments are aligned with different sort of places, but that's probably conversation
Oh, yeah.
for another time for sure. Now, you had a bit of a go at the Liberal Party today. You've got a bit of a call out for
Yes.
the ALP, right? You want to be the actual Liberal Party.
I want my name back.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I want to be. I'm the Liberal Party,
Right.
and unless they can start acting more liberal, yes, they should give their name back.
Yeah.
They should relinquish their name, the Liberal Party, call themselves the Conservative Party because that's what they are,
Yep.
or increasingly that's what they're appearing to be.
becoming,
And yes, let someone else who's actually a Liberal Party take on that moniker.
That's right. I mean, I've read that the potential change of a name for the Sex Party is on the cards.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Look, I think it's always on the card. I have to say, and I don't say this very often, but at the federal election, it did feel quite stark that people were saying, we love all your policies, we love what you're doing, but your name really puts us off. Now, I wish people, I don't understand why people get put off by the word sex.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's on every single government form you fill out,
Yeah.
it's on your passport, it's why we're here.
Yeah.
In some ways, I kind of go, well, until you can be grown up about sex, I'm keeping the name.
Yeah.
However, it may be that it puts a ceiling on how many votes and how big we can grow.
Yeah.
But Jesus, I can't come up with a better name yet.
Right. Well, I mean, did you see yourself, having this conversation, 5-6 years ago?
No.
Yeah. I mean,
No.
it's a kind of short but really positive story that the Sex Party has
Yeah.
been telling so far.
And look, we've done end of life choices. So I got a bill up to talk about physician assisted dying.
Yeah.
I got legislation up to regulate Uber. I got legislation up to protect women from being harassed at abortion clinics. I will keep pushing on my issues. And it nudges the government because there's actually a lot of progressive people in there.
For sure.
And
some of them are bound by where they're sitting.
That's
aren't
right. Unfortunately, they are.
Yeah.
But this enables them to nudge their caucuses, and it enables everyone to nudge.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I can just be that person that pokes everyone a little bit further ahead.
I guess there's a couple of questions that came in from people online as well, but most of them have to do with. I mean, it's such a sensitive subject around cannabis, and there are a lot of people out in the community who are using it, illegally, recreationally, sure, but also medicinally, and the subject does get confused, and that's why I asked you before how important it is to keep it separate. But
I think it's one of the points that when you look at the common path towards the legalisation of personal use.
Yeah.
The path has been through medicinal. And we saw that in California, we've seen that in a lot of the United States, and we've seen that in Europe. That's not necessarily going to be our path here, because as you say, that's 20 years old, that path.
Yeah.
That data is already there, that research is there. But I do think that medicinal cannabis is something very special. But as I say, there's the crossover. When people can grow their own plants, which they should be allowed to do, if you're going to go into a commercial activity, then I think that's where governments fix in. But if you're going to make your own beer to drink yourself or grow your own plants, I don't care whether you're growing them for pleasure or because it helps your arthritis.
Yeah, right. Yeah, just like if you're making whiskey to ease your sore throat.
That's right,
to have a nice fun Friday night.
Exactly.
Yeah, and reminiscent of Matt Riley's treat Bud Light beer, from
That's
the
right.
free cannabis community.
Yeah.
Look, and I guess a lot of this is kind of self-evident once you start to read what the motion was, and if people are able to see how the debate went today. But the idea of this playing into state revenue, and with medicinal cannabis being a kind of touchy ground for GPs at the moment.
Yes.
How they do it.
That's right.
How they go about performing and things like that. Something like this motion opens up people, naturopaths, Chinese doctors, who've prescribed it for thousands of years anyway. Do you see that as part of the move on for this kind of emotion? Or for recreational cannabis? Because there's farming and recreational use as well, but there's a huge boutique market that opens up as well, and lots of small jobs, from glass blowers through to manufacturers of beauty products.
That's right. And when you look at a lot of the research that's being done into CBD oils, and the research that's been done into the variety of cannabinoids, not just the CBDs and the THCs and THCAs, when you're seeing what we're doing in the terpenes, that's medicinal cannabis is work. That's that role of that research, and we should be encouraging governments to really fund that and fund that well. But there is a role for a commercial element to this, and I know people say, oh no, it should be free and it should be not taxed, and this is a terrible thing. Unfortunately, we all want to drive on the roads, we all want good schools, we all want good hospitals, we have to pay for them. And rather than, but I'm not saying don't grow your own.
Just like you can choose to grow your own.
That's right.
Brew your own alcohol and not pay taxes on it.
That's right. And most I was looking at Uruguay. Uruguay, it's $1 a gram. For cannabis. It's not expensive.
For sure.
But they limit the amount you can have, but they also allow you to grow. You can grow 6 plants.
Totally.
And I think we will find that a lot of people, I don't want to make my own wine or make my own beer. I'm more than happy to go and...
Some people want Big Pharma to make their medicine for
them. That's right.
Some people are happy to go and have a herbal fix as well.
It's all about choice. And if the government can get revenue from it, someone actually alluded to that. The Greens alluded to governments getting addicted to taxes. But I can tell you now, if you want to keep something legal, tax it.
I mean, we're already addicted to taxes.
That's right.
All governments are, right?
Yeah. And, in some idyllic worlds where it's an anarchic society or it's a wonderful society where we all chip in and we all do our own thing and we make it beautiful, that's great. I don't think I'm going to see it in my lifetime.
So in your reply to the House, you left the Greens out again. Everybody else got a little bit of kudos, but I don't think you came back.
Oh no, I did mention Colleen.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, because what Colleen had said, and I did strike on this, was that prohibition has failed.
Yeah.
Prohibition has made drugs more dangerous. Mm-hmm. Prohibition has affected the health of our community.
Yeah.
And I did,
Yeah, and thank you.
I did thank her. I did.
Yeah, because I mean, again, it's just it seems like such a silly conversation to be having in this day and age when there's so many places to look forward to.
That's right.
And see that places like Israel, which is huge on the world forefront for cannabis at the moment, and that entry of medicinal cannabis down the road of recreational cannabis. Yeah, it'd be really exciting to see a reverse of that happen, or happen side by side.
And I think because the one thing that we have learned, possibly here, and which may stymie that process happening in that what we would see as traditional way, medicinal to recreational, is that we saw how California, their medicinal cannabis approach was so deregulated. It's the sore thumb approach, and so we've seen other states now as they do it. It's a much tighter.
Totally. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens in November this year in California.
It will be fascinating.
Recreational 99% coming in and regulation coming to the industry.
Yeah.
And I personally know people that work within that grey area.
Yes.
And they're happy for the regulation because at the moment they know they do things that perhaps they shouldn't. But perhaps they can too. It's a grey, really undefined thing. So once proper regulation and legislation comes in, they can make themselves compliant with it all.
That's right. That's right. And I think this is an opportunity, and it's it's much better to be working within a legal framework than working on the edge. And I know, I mean, you've been in California, and I know that some issues around water supply and cannabis crops that are being grown in that grey area. This is a real issue, and Australia needs to face that as well. I mean, we probably don't have the level of plantation that we're seeing in...
California is supporting other huge industries as well. And I mean, that brings up another important part. With Australia looking to having legalised medicinal cannabis, and the only potential suppliers at the moment coming from overseas.
That's right.
There's another huge potential boom for Victoria.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned briefly, I was lucky enough to go and look at the Secret Squirrel medicinal cannabis lab. And, you know, I was actually really impressed. I was not expecting to be impressed.
Yep.
I was expecting them to be kind of repeating research that we already knew.
Sure.
And, you know, just really doing their own thing. But they were cloning. They were even starting to look at making some of their own strains.
Wow.
It was really interesting, and they're
all CBD prominent strains. Is that correct? I mean, seems to be a little bit of confusion within this change as to whether THC is on or off the table.
It's not. It's sitting on the side bench.
Yeah.
It's sitting over there.
It hasn't been put in the bin.
It hasn't. It's not in the bin at all,
Yeah.
because the Victorian Law Reform Commission's report said this should be available for all of these various symptoms, of which a number of them will need THC products for them to be effective. But the first one, the easy one, is the CBD products for children.
Yeah.
And so what they're growing now and what they're cloning now is low CBD.
High CBD.
Sorry, high CBD, low THC product.
Yeah.
That, and you know, that also because they're growing it in sterile conditions. It's also even the shape of the plant that they're concerned about to make sure that moisture doesn't sit within it, and
sure.
you know, it's really interesting, and they'll be doing that. But they do have some high THC strains as well. This is probably about the only thing I'm allowed to say about the secret plant growth, apart from the fact that I was blown away by it. And that I was there, and that I wasn't allowed to take a photo. But
the Premier got to take a photo.
That's what I said.
But I'll tell you, no one was very impressed with what they saw from the cannabis community.
I tell you, they were looking a lot better when I went there.
Oh, I hope so.
But they are looking for a smaller plant that's, I think they're looking at something like a plant that they can get on a 3-month cycle. But what I was very... can tell you is that they've been working with Canada for this. So this is, and I think that's really good because where Canada's going. You know, and the Canadian government is about to legalise cannabis for personal use. So if we're starting this relationship with Canada, I think I'm gonna keep encouraging them to go out together more.
Sure.
You know,
and there's the whole Commonwealth connection there as well.
Exactly.
So, and Jamaica, another former Commonwealth but Commonwealth country, has fully legalised cannabis in the last 12, 18 months or so.
Well, they were losing tourism because everybody else was doing it.
Exactly. Right? And not just the
Colorado, Jamaica.
Exactly. Where am I going to go? But we're starting to see it happen, and at England, it's the police chiefs there are saying they can't really be out there arresting people. No current police officers are saying that here, but as you said, we've got ex-police officers.
That's
talking
right.
About it, we've got the story of Dan Haslam's father, who was an ex-cop
that's
who,
right.
Changed his whole view on cannabis.
So
it's an exciting time for cannabis.
Off the record, police are saying this is crazy. This is crazy. $1 billion worth of hot houses in Melbourne. We're supplying the Northern Territory here. One of the guys from the Hemp Embassy was telling me he was up in the Northern Territory visiting some Aboriginal communities, and they were smoking hydro from Victoria, in a tropical climate.
And why can't the government get a piece of that?
Well, that's right. Absolutely. I mean, it's going back to Hell's Angels or someone like that.
I mean, I remember being in California around 2011, and the cannabis dispensaries. The cannabis dispensaries were actually trying to create a new tax for themselves to legitimise themselves more.
Exactly. And there was, and it's a really good point, and they've actually just passed it. They've just introduced a bill, and I think it's just passed on that exact issue. And I spoke to the senator that was moving that, because he lived up in the north of the state, where a lot of the growing was happening, but all the sales were happening down south. So the people that were doing most of the work and used most of the resources, they weren't benefiting from the sales. And I think they were doing like a flat 5 or 10% sales tax, which I think the industry was really largely in favour of.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, anything that helps to legitimise it and keep it in place is going to be a good thing. All right, Fiona, I reckon we can probably call that quits.
Great.
Once again, thank you so much for your brave step today.
Thank you.
You know, not just putting that forward, but, you know, stepping clear and admitting to being a cannabis user yourself. So, you know, part of this podcast is to let the world know that the cannabis community is everybody.
Absolutely. And thank you. And I think this is really important. And there were some very good letters, which I no doubt your listeners took part in. There's some great emails that I saw going to my colleagues, and I think they need to hear those good stories, and they need to hear from us. And we do need to be out about cannabis use, and you know, we need to kind of fight that stigma.
All right, awesome.
Brilliant.
Fiona. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks
Cheers.
for your work.
So that was it. My little sit down with Fiona. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks again to her for taking the time to sit down with us. And again, thank you for putting forward, you know, and starting a conversation that's really important. And hopefully we'll start to see it expanded upon as the medicinal cannabis debate moves forward. Let's see the recreational debate progress alongside it as well. All right, guys, so a little bit of housekeeping for episode 4. I want you to keep your eyes peeled to the YouTube channel. In the coming days, we'll have our unboxing of the 420 Australia Oz box, which is a bi-monthly cannabis goodies box. The details for that will be in the episode notes. But check our YouTube. We'll have an official unboxing. Mine arrived just the other day, and it's like Christmas here at the moment. It's sitting over there on the counter, ready to be opened, but I want the surprise to be there for the camera. Our Instagram account, 418 followers, so going to hit 420 any day now, and I will be doing a random giveaway when that happens. Speaking of giveaways, there is our Instagram Herbalized poster art competition running at the moment. I've got 4 amazing giveaway packs that are up for grabs. All you need to do is print off a copy of the poster. The links are available through our Facebook page and through the episode notes. And get a photo of the poster somewhere up and about near where you live, in your room, in your work, somewhere cool, somewhere fun. And tag us. All the information on how to enter is in the episode notes and on our Instagram page as well. And we have some great prize packs coming out through that. Talking about Instagram, 420 followers there, 200 on our Facebook. So, you know, make sure you're hitting us on the Twitter, on the Instagram, on the SoundCloud, sharing, retweeting, reposting. We really appreciate that. We're really trying to get the message out to as many people as we can. So the guys from the podcast, Heavy Days Genetics, released a second episode, another lengthy listen, but really well worth it. Again, for all things cannabis growing, they are the podcast to listen to. So go check them out. The links are in the notes. We will be having an ongoing cannabis and music series, cannabis and music conversation series, and that's going to kick off on our next episode with Gappy Ranks. Gappy Ranks was recently in Australia and New Zealand. If you don't know Gappy, check out the links in the episode notes. He is a dance hall and roots reggae artist from the UK, and Gappy was cool enough to sit down with us during a recording session here in Melbourne and have a chat about how cannabis is a part of his music. Also coming up shortly, we will be doing an episode on sport and cannabis. It's going to be an exciting one, depending on where your sporting tastes lie. So far, I'm talking to legendary jiu-jitsu guy Kurt Osiander from Half Gracie Jiu-Jitsu in San Francisco. Austin K. Fox, who's a all-round badass, but a motocross guy in his own right, and also legendary skater David the Hackman Hackett. So that's a little bit of what we've got coming up in the pipeline. Be sure to subscribe through all the channels that you can. Again, everything will be in the episode notes. Now it's time for the Herbalized crew THC shout outs. Hitting us up with donations. Jesse I, my man from Chant Down Sound and the Higher Level Record Shack. Jesse runs a monthly reggae dance here in Melbourne. So if you're ever in Melbourne on the second Saturday of the month, make sure you check it out. You can check him out at chantdown.com. Top Ranking Sound, the repress specialists, vintage, classic reggae and Jamaican jams. The website is there in the notes. The family at Leverage Jiu-Jitsu in Thomastown. You can check them out on the website in the notes. If you live in the area, if you're into jiu-jitsu at all, if you're looking for a self-defense academy, I couldn't recommend those guys highly enough. Also got to big up Blazed Australia. Blazed is the man for merchandise here in Australia. We're going to have him on the show pretty soon for a Herbalized special. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that one. Got to big up the guys at the podcast, Heavy Days Genetics. Their links will be down in the episode notes as well. The guys over at 420 Australia, as I said, keep your eyes peeled to our YouTube channel for the Ozbox unboxing. Those guys put out a bi-monthly cannabis gift box for the Aussie cannabis enthusiasts. So you can check out where you can be a part of that. And the guys at the Pure Haze Vape team, again, their website will be in the episode notes. Those guys hooked us up with some goodies, and they have made their way into the prize packs for our poster art competition. Be sure to check out all the episode notes for a full list of sponsors and friends. And we will see you guys for our next episode of the legendary Gappy Ranks. Stay herbalized.
Legalize it. Don't criticize it.